Good afternoon. Dawn Cameron Dick here from Festival of Quilts 2021 with a display of some of my applique work. Now, I am known generally for my Invisible Machine Appliqué, which is a method of turning your edges under and using an invisible stitch, no bonding web, to attach your applique to your work. This quilt here, the border piece on it, is an example of that. And it looks and feels hand done, but it isn't hand done, and it doesn't have the benefit of being so portable and so casual. Now, when I'm traveling, and I travel a lot, I like to have things that I can just work with my hands and still enjoy and see what I'm doing around me. So I do a lot of handwork. And traditional needle turn applique, where you put a shape on your background fabric and with your needle turn those seam allowances under and stitch them down, is lovely for that. But putting things on a background, you have to tack them, you have to position them. So I have been doing a lot more with what I call reverse hand applique. So I put my background over the fabric that will be shown, draw my design on it, turn the edges under and stitch them down. A lot less fiddly work. Now, it does require a little bit of preparation, but then you've got it in a bag. You can take it when you go to an appointment or when you're left waiting on hold at a phone call or whatever. Now, the piece I have behind me is an example of my original Invisible Machine Appliqué, and this was designed during our lockdown when Dame Vera Lynn died. They kept playing the Bluebirds Over song, and I do a lot with Drunkard's Path. But I don't piece it. Curved piecing to me is just, it takes the fun out of making it. These are all Invisible Machine Appliqué with my IMA technique. An invisible monofilament on the top, a lightweight cotton in the bobbin, and I use freezer paper to create the shape, roll the seam allowances over with starch, glue them on with a tiny little drop of fabric glue, and then do the invisible stitch. So you see here the background is a dark blue, and I have a light Drunkard's Path. This one has a light square with a patterned Drunkard's Path. This one is a patterned piece with a white background. So it's just playing with the colors on it, you can create different shapes. Now, getting back to the reverse applique, if we move over to these, this one here is completely reversed. And if you were here in person, I'd invite you to sort of poke it with your finger, because this started out as a white piece of fabric with the design drawn on it. I then put my major fabric behind it, cut away the white fabric, and turned the edges under to expose that color. Stitched around it. I love using a long milliner's needle, a size 11, and I am absolutely in love with the Aurifil 80 weight cotton for that stitching. So just stitch them down. Then when all of these, which are all from the same color fabric, were stitched, I cut the extra fabric away and placed a new fabric, a K-facet fabric here, and I did the stems in between them. Nothing had to be, can you imagine taking these little pieces, putting them on, hoping they're the right way, tacking them on? It just sucks the fun out of making them. So by doing this, everything is in one place, you don't lose things, very, very easy to stitch. The one that at the show, I don't know if you can wander on down this way, that has been very popular is the ammonite. You have the design drawn on the paper, you put freezer paper over it and trace it. From your freezer paper, you cut out all the positive spaces, everything you want to be an ammonite, and then you put your brown fabric behind it, thread tack around it, and then you start again, just cutting out, turning those edges under. Having done that all with the handwork, I then used a heavier, the size 12 Aurifil thread, and I did some hand quilting in groups of 3. I didn't want anything to take away from the fluidity of the ammonite shell, and I think the strong straight lines really gave it good definition. When that piece was done, I just looked in my stash and I had this piece. I didn't know what I was ever going to do with it, because cutting it up would have been a shame. And when the quilting goddess is on your side, this is the moment that you lay this down, and it's exactly the right size for me to lay this piece on, turn the edges under, and I appliqued it onto that square. So I have no mitered corners, no straight edges, and then of course cut the square out behind it, so I still have a nice usable square of this in my stash as well. This one I originally did, and maybe I'll show it to you a little bit later, did it in rainbow colors as well, but it's a wonderful, calm, zen moment, just sitting there stitching time and time again. I teach classes, of course. That's what I am. I don't look at myself as a competitive quilter. I'm not an artist. I'm just a woman who absolutely loves fabric and working with quilt making. And teaching has been my passion all these years. So patterns, techniques, workshops, classes that I do, the end result is always to get you excited about doing this, not intimidated, not frightened, but feeling, yeah, I can do that. So when I first started teaching the reverse applique, I used my hair. All you need to do is find a really beautiful ground area for your hair to hop through. Then you find the color you want your hair to be. In this case, on the tree background, I drew my hair with white chalk pen. I then tacked a large piece of gray behind the trees, cut out the trees to expose the hair. And even standing here now, it looks three-dimensional. It looks like the hair was needle turned onto the trees, but not, it's actually reverse. So again, you can see that is where the seam is, and it was turned under. Some machine quilting with silver metallic thread, a little bit of Swarovski crystals for a tiny bit of frosty light on it, and I think it's a very, very effective piece. I'd like to think that you'd give some handwork a go, because we're all so full of, we've got to go, we've got to do, how fast can I make this quilt? It really breaks my heart when people say, how long did that take? I don't know. So what I'm trying to do now is get people interested again in handwork, whether it's traditional needle turn applique or reverse hand applique. Hand quilting. Come on, folks. We can be hand quilters if we want to be. I'm a machine quilter. I love doing it. But there's always that time where you just want to sit and do something quiet and gentle and think a little bit and relax. That's what this lockdown and the virus, I think, has done for us. This piece here that I'm doing is a very big Hawaiian applique. This was one of those dream big panels, the large flower that was printed on a background. I couldn't think of anything to do with it, and a friend gave it to me. So instead, I used it as a background. I drew my Hawaiian design on it. I put a big piece of purple behind it, cut away all the dream big panel to expose the purple. I'm a hand quilter. I wanted to hand quilt it with some echo quilting. I couldn't see the thread on the purple. Not exactly the brightest thing to have done. So I found if I just turned it over and I put it in my hoop from the reverse side, I did all the quilting in there on the reverse side. I could see where my stitches were. I could do echo quilting without any problem. Came out beautifully. And it wasn't until I had it all done that I actually turned it over and found out what it looked like. And you know what it looked like? It looked like I hadn't quilted in it at all, because all that beautiful work that you could see here, you couldn't see on this side. But you know what? I enjoyed every minute of it, and just touching it gives me joy. So whether you would notice it when you looked at it or not didn't really matter to me. It was about that joy of actually hand stitching. So if sometime you're ever down in the Southwest, I live in Portishead. People always say, where is that? It's across the M5 from Bristol. We're on the water's edge there. John and I live in a lovely Victorian house with a big garden. We built a studio in it. And you could come down and spend the day. I do day-long classes. I don't cook the food, so don't worry, I'm not going to poison you. John is an excellent chef. He produces all the food. And we can sit and we can do any technique at all that you would enjoy. Because sometimes you think, I'd just like a little help with my hand quilting. And then could you show me this? And I have this problem with this pattern. Well, it's your day. Whatever you'd like to do, we can do. So maybe you could take a look at my website as well and see if there's anything there that would interest you. Come and see me at the shows, because it's always such a joy to be able to talk to quilters, and especially if you've ever known me or been in a class, I absolutely love seeing what you've produced. Bring pictures, let's talk and share, because that's what quilting is all about. Bottom line thing I'd like to leave with you is the thought that this isn't really all about talent. I actually do not believe I am particularly talented, but I am technically good. And what I find helps me is using the right products, the right size needle or the correct weight of thread. pre-washing my fabrics, little things that keep disasters from happening. So a couple of years ago, I wrote a book to put all this information in, and it's called The Pocket Tutor. And The Pocket Tutor is a hard-covered book with a spiral binding that can lay down wherever you're wanting to read. And it's got a chapter on needles, threads, sewing machines, waddings, and bits and pieces. And this is just meant to be a quick reference guide to explain to you what all these different things are. How is an embroidery needle different from a universal? If I'm using a 40-weight thread, is there a different size needle I need to use as opposed to using monofilament invisible thread? Well, yes, there is, and it's all in here. And as you build up a repertoire of the things that work for you, there's a page at every chapter where you can write down the stuff that you really want to remember quickly. So there's resources at the back and charts. It's a really handy little book, and as it has some elastic, you can just put it in your sewing basket and it should keep nice and tidy for the next 100 years. If you're interested in these, again, take a look at the website. But I appreciate you coming to my gallery today, having a look around, hearing a little bit about who I am and what I am. And please come back and visit sometime because I would love to talk to you. Thank you. Bye.